and the chicken says, "I'm perfectly sober. I'll drive." It's the way we tell them, right?
Brilliant.
It's the way we tell them. The first half of that joke was way funnier than the.
Well, it would have to be, really, wouldn't it? It would have to be. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the digital download. It's Friday again. So let's quickly go around and introduce ourselves. Rob.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, based just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and we are a proud DLA partner.
Eric.
My name's Eric Doyle, based in Aberdeen, Scotland, and we are digital commercial advisors, and we too happen to be, strangely, partnered with DLA Ignite. Strange.
Alex.
Hi everyone, Alex from Supero, based in sunny Leighton Buzzard, Bedfordshire, UK. Pleased to be here, and also a proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Oh, come on.
There's a theme here, isn't there?
There is a theme.
Lenwood.
Hello, I'm Lenwood Ross, founder and CEO of Accelerate, partner of DLA Ignite, and based in the US, just outside of New York City.
Tracy.
And lastly, I'm Tracy Borison. I am just outside of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, part of the Crux team, who Eric so fondly already mentioned is a partner of DLA Ignite.
And you're not last, actually. Last, but by no means least, Tim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Welcome, everybody. And I'm just going to, they say never start with an apology, so I will do. I have a bit of personal drama in my life at the moment, and if I have to disappear, please accept my apologies. I'm waiting for a phone call from my mother, and the moment that comes through, I'm leaving. Sorry.
Okay,
We get you.
say hello to your mum from us.
I will do, yes.
That's just modern life these days, isn't it? That's just
Yeah.
that's working from
Well,
home.
you've got to be on her beck and call, you know.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. So, chat. Sorry, I forgot to switch the chat on. So sorry to everybody.
Hi, John Bloomfield.
Hi, John.
Yeah.
Hi, Martin.
Oh, hey, Martin.
Hi, John again. Sorry, we missed you. And
Plenty of John.
and hi, Andrew.
Andrew. You said some really nice things about me yesterday. Thank you, Andrew.
No, it was lovely, wasn't it? On social things.
Sales, the lifeblood of every business. Sales is, whether you'd like to admit it or not, the most important role in every organization, whether that's selling products and services that generate revenue or selling ideas to stimulate conversation and change the mindset of people. If you don't acknowledge that sales is the gateway to the wider world, your organization operates in a vacuum and is bound to fail. I think it's fair to say that over the last few years, sales has changed out of all recognition. There used to be differentiation in the market. Every business had a USP. That's not necessarily the same. So now it's become much harder, and the role of the salesperson has consequently got much harder. The buyer has become more knowledgeable and sophisticated. They find it easier to discover facts and the names of your competitors. For organizations, price has become, in many cases, the only tool at their disposal to close business. If I offer a bigger discount than you, customers will choose me over you. It is this type of catastrophically short-sighted thinking that was the crucible in which the challenger methodology was forged. So now the seller can take control of the customer conversation. Is this still relevant? What has changed? What is an eternal truth in sales? What learnings can we take away from this as this decade-old methodology that is still talked about as if it is the latest thing, and people talk about how they have done the Challenger program. So I think it's fair to say that it gives us all the greatest of pleasure to welcome Brent Adamson, who is the author of The Challenger Sale.
I gotta admit, guys, I kind of feel like this is an inquiry or something.
That's a job interview, Brent.
I don't know. That intro is a little dramatic. Like, now here to defend himself is Brent Adamson. So.
It's not at all.
Brent, is this a bit like, you know, when like AC/DC go on tour to do their new album and everybody starts shouting, "Do Highway to Hell"?
That's funny, actually. I thought that's a great analogy. There's maybe, yeah. I was on LinkedIn yesterday, and there was a talk about Challenger, and someone said, "Hey, have you read this book? You should read this book." And someone said in the comments, "I don't know, it's a little bit old school." And it's like, when did I become old school? I think the answer is it's not old school. I'm just old. That's a difference. But before we start, there's something I have to clear up, other than how the chicken can reach the steering wheel and the gas pedal at the same time. But Tracy, it's a question for you because this really matters. Are you east of Calgary or west of Calgary? Because that's a radical difference in those two. And I'm hoping you're going to say west. Are you west?
No. For those of you who don't know Calgary, the mountains are west and the prairies are east.
Yes, they are. So you could, like someone told me once in Plano, Texas. So Tracy, you're one of those people that can watch your dog running away for 2 days, right? So it is so flat. But just west of you is probably, other than maybe Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland, the most beautiful place in the world, which is Banff. And I will be there in Lake Louise.
Oh, Banff is lovely.
Super excited. So.
Wow.
Anyone else doing their sales kickoff at Lake Louise, like Smart Technology, sign me up.
Lake
I will
Louise
come do your
beautiful.
kickoff for free. Yeah. Let me say hi to Martin too. Martin, how you doing? Grüß Gott. It's good to see you, man. All right. Sorry, I've now completely hijacked your show. What would you guys like to talk about?
Well, you're talking about doing amazing sales kickoffs in Lake Louise, and I'm looking at sales kickoffs in Torrey in Aberdeen.
Oh God, I've got another one in Toronto coming up too, and I just say, who does a sales kickoff in Toronto or Montreal? It's like, y'all know it's cold up there. It's like, and no mountains. But anyway,
who does a sales kickoff in Torrey in Aberdeen?
That's a fair point. Here in the States, we all go to Orlando. I call it the Great Migration. It's like, it's like I call upon the sales organizations of the world to reunite in 1 year's time in Orlando. It's like,
I always just have a question about companies that, and I used to work for larger organizations, and they're like, the sales kickoff is in Vegas, and everybody would go, oh.
Well, that's problematic.
That's problematic. Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah. Productivity Central. All right.
So,
what do you guys want to know?
Okay, so you wrote the Challenger Sale 11 years ago. Well, it was published 11 years ago. So I guess the first question is, what's changed? A decade has gone past. When it came onto the market, it was a completely fresh way of controlling the sale and controlling the conversation and steering the customer where you wanted them to be and building equity with the customer and proving that you could add more value than your competitors. So is it still relevant? 10 years is an awfully long time, isn't it?
Yeah, although look, Neil Rackham's been selling was at that time 10 years old roughly, and I would argue his stuff is still relevant today too, right? In some ways it is. And if you talk to someone like Aaron Evans, who's very keen on studying the history of sales, he'll tell you this stuff was written in the 30s, potentially still. Stephen Covey, though it's not the 30s, but it's also still relevant, right? And it's because a lot of this stuff is tied to human interaction, and there's I think something about the stories that I've as I've gotten older, and I've come to really appreciate sort of what's going on. There's so much of the story is contextual and how that context changes, Adam. So, particularly in the buying side. So we can come back and talk about how buying behavior has changed and the world in which buying happens has changed radically. But the thing is that's so interesting is the actors in that world that are changing so radically are still human beings, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are certain underlying just realities of our human condition that haven't changed. And I think this is what's really interesting. So I was doing a kickoff keynote for a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I was sharing the virtual stage with Tiffany Bova. I would imagine most of you guys know Tiffany over at Salesforce. Yeah, and she was at Gartner for a long time. Tiffany's very, very smart and written a couple books on strategy and sales. And the argument in the keynote it was all about the partner ecosystem and how go-to ecosystem, is the new, which by the way has nothing to do with the name of the company I work for, which coincidentally is also ecosystems. But this is a group of individuals that say the best way to go to market today is not as a company, but as an ecosystem of companies, a group, a network of companies. And so our host, who's actually a really good guy, his name's Jared, was kind of putting this position out, and Tiffany just wouldn't have any of it. She said, look, we were talking about this 25 years ago. There's nothing new here. Which is not to say it was wrong. It was just nothing new. And so the reason I say all this is because I find as I get older, I'm kind of finding myself, it's kind of like, the other day I told kids, I went outside literally and told kids to get off my lawn. I've become that guy, right? It's like, I'm becoming like this guy that says, we were talking about that 20 years ago. You know, it's like I'm like in this angry, crabby old dude who's just like saying there's nothing new here. And what occurs to me is when we came out with the Challenger, there were angry old crabby dudes saying there's nothing new here then. And now it's like I totally get what they were talking about now, right? So it's so sorry, that was just a long rant for nothing. But so Adam, let me see if I can answer your question. So yes. So if I think about at least the 30 years of sales and B2B commerce that I've been involved with, the front row seat, I think it's a story. And Tim, and I think you and I have talked about this pretty extensively, but it's a story of effectively what I might call chasing differentiation, right? Which is how is it that we can stand apart in the marketplace? How can we look different to our customers such that they are willing to, they trust us more, they appreciate us more, they value us more, and as a result, well, of course, are willing to pay us more. And I think what's interesting is it's really a story of kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So there's progress, but the rules of the game keeps changing on how you differentiate. So if you think about when Challenger came out 11 years ago, it was a story of solution selling, right? So not the solution selling methodology, but we are going to market selling a solution, right? So we are, you know, the transition at that time was from product selling to solution selling. Our individual products are easily replicated. Our individual products can be commoditized very quickly. We need to add more value. So we're going to go to market not through an individual product, but we're going to go to market through a broader solution. We're going to add capabilities, add services through organic growth and M&A activity. We can now say that we, you know, would you like fries with that, right? So we can say well, we have this service wraparound. We have additional products. So we're going to offer you a platform that touches more parts of the organization. What's interesting is that so much of the research we were doing back then at CEB in sales across, say, 2000 to 2010 was all about how do I do that? Because it's actually really, really hard to sell what some companies call the continuum. How do I sell 1 + 1 + 1 = 4? How do I cobble together? I still hear this all the time today. It's like we bought all these companies and now we want to show our customer the incremental value of the fact that the sum is greater, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so a lot of our research on how to do that effectively. The trouble was, or the challenge was, that one company built out its solution set, another company, a competitor, would build out its solution set. So think like FedEx and UPS, right? FedEx started with what? Planes, and UPS started with trucks. And over time, so that was I got a product, overnight shipping on planes. I got a product, like freight shipping and trucks. And they built, and one got planes, the other one got trucks. They both bought stores. They both went global. And now they have world-class solutions, but they have world-class solutions that kind of look exactly like each other, right? So it's like, by the way, if you hadn't gone on that journey, you would have been really in trouble. So you kind of had to do it. But so that was chasing differentiation. You do that to chase differentiation. And then you fast forward 10 years, and all of a sudden you find yourself saying, oh, bleep, right? It's like my competitor's pretty much equally good at this as I am. So now what? And that's when Challenger hit. So this is about 2010, 2011. The original research was 2008, 2009. And there's a story of the downturn and all that in there too, of course, which is very dramatic. But you guys will remember maybe the punchline of the Challenger work is in many ways your biggest opportunity is not the only way, but your biggest opportunity for differentiation is not what you sell, but how you sell, right? It's your ability to go to market and share with your customer insights, not about your business, about their business, ways to help them think differently, to save money, make money they haven't fully appreciated. That, by the way, that was Challenger in a 30-second soundbite, right? So and the world kind of like it's like it was lightning in a bottle. It just hit right at the right time. One, because of the global financial crisis, but two, because we were seeing diminishing returns on companies' ability to differentiate through solution selling alone, right? And so now it was essentially what the book did was give people an opportunity to differentiate that they hadn't fully appreciated before, which is the conversations you're having with your customers that are based on insight and teaching customers something new about their business. Right about that same time, though, Adam, so I don't know, was this 2011, 2012? I think people are kind of figuring this out irrespective of Challenger, because right about the time I started hearing from sales leaders and GMs and CEOs around the world, you know what we need to be, Brent? It's like, oh God, what is it? Here comes. We need to be, wait for it, we need to be a thought leader. Because if we could be a thought leader in our industry, right? If we could demonstrate to the market, see, you're all laughing, right? Because you all heard this, right? So if we could be a thought leader in our marketplace, if we could demonstrate that we have very smart, cutting-edge perspectives backed by research, we will build a brand around us, a moat around our expertise, such that customers, when they're facing their toughest challenges, will come to us first to look to us to help them solve their mission-critical priorities. Does all this sound familiar, right? This is the classic talk track of every CEO. And what's interesting is marketers like, whoo, yeah, sign me up. They got all excited, right? So, because right about that time, 2015, what happens? What comes over the horizon for marketers? Content marketing. It's going to save us all, right? And shortly thereafter, the technology to do that, marketing automation. And shortly thereafter, data, right? So now I've got I've got a mandate marketing, a content marketing. I've got the tools, content marketing or marketing automation, I should say, and I've got the raw material data to start. And I've got the CEO instruction to be a thought leader. Put all four of those things together, and I start pumping out huge amounts of content in the world. I start spamming the world with smart stuff. And oh, by the way, right about that same time, sales organizations, particularly in the SaaS world, decided, you know what would be awesome if we hired 1,000 people and called them SDRs to send 40 million in-mails a day, right? So now I've just got massive amounts of content everywhere, and it's not garbage content. It's actually pretty good content, right? And so inside of that world, now challengers all of a sudden looking like, I got a commercial insight, so it's not that challenger's bad or wrong or a bad idea, but the context within which you now approach your customer with a commercial insight is radically different, because we live in a world that's just swimming in high quantities of high quality content. I call this the smartness arms race. And I think we'd all agree the smartness arms race has ended in a tie, right? It's like mutual assured destruction. It's like, it's like nuclear war, except in a much lower level, sort of, thank God, sort of stakes, right? But so what I would say, Adam, is that I think Challenger is still absolutely right in this sense. If you're competing against status quo, your customers don't believe they need to change. If you're competing straight up against a competitor, and particularly if that's relatively far down the pitch or the field, and your customers or your potential customers saying, we like them, you're going to have to disrupt that. You need to disrupt the status quo. You need to disrupt their belief in a certain course of action if that course of action doesn't lead to your strengths. But that happens now in a context where everyone else, whether they're doing insight or challenger or just thought leadership or just writing another bleeping white paper with 50 pages of data and supporting it by a subject matter expert and then sending it to you in an in-mail, one way or another, it's just really, really hard to stand out with that alone. And so I think I told us about the smartness arms race. The only one to really lose in the smartness arms race is your customer, because now think about it from their perspective. We all take our marketing hats off and our sales hats off and our supplier and our CEO hats off and put our customer hat on and our buying hat on. Think about what it feels like today to be a B2B buyer of a large complex solution. I got more people involved than ever before. I'm facing more complexity in that buying, because with more people comes more complexity in ways that I can't even anticipate. All of a sudden, finance is getting involved and asking questions I've never heard before. I get the data protection team asking me questions I didn't even know existed, right? It's just become so hard, and I just don't know how to travel through my own buying process. We all traditionally said, map the customer buying process. And how do you do that? Well, you ask your customer how they buy. Your customers don't know how they buy. They have no idea how to map their own journey, because it's too bleeping hard. And now they're facing all this extra content that, and then I got to implement this thing that you bought, which means I got to tie it into 15 other IT systems that I haven't figured out how to get them to work. And now I want to do this too. And at the same time, I don't even know how to measure this thing. What's the value of it? So I think what we have really now that we didn't have 10 years ago in face of all this complexity is this massive crisis of confidence among customers. And I think there's four forces that are eroding that confidence. It's decision complexity, information overload, implementation uncertainty, and what I call value opacity, at which point everyone gives me a hard time because they've never heard the word opacity before.
Most of us went to school here in the UK, so we get that.
So you guys are smart. You know how to use more than three syllables in a word. This is why I love you all. And Canadians, I love you because you're just amazing human beings. But there you go. So But I don't know, Adam. What do you think? That's a very different world. That challenges.
So we Brent are 100% on board with this. We spend our whole lives trying to educate, add value, share our knowledge with people to empower them to a point where they know what it is they're buying.
Yeah.
But interestingly, and the first kind of proper question that's come in was this. There's a recent move to digital sales, sometimes called inside sales. McKinsey say that 2/3 of buyers prefer digital self-service model or remote human interaction. Any views on this? Now, just because McKinsey said it doesn't make it true, and we have run up against this a number of times. This is a bunch of people that wear tailcoats and stovepipe hats and go into the office and talk about information. In many cases, not all cases, but in many cases. So they are not, to quote their own idiom here, they are not drinking their own champagne, because they are not the most forward-looking and digital of organizations. None of these big consultancies are. But it does raise a good point, doesn't it? That now, often, when we ourselves are buyers, we try to do the research before we engage with a salesperson. We try to go out and educate ourselves. We have got our shortlist. We may even have chosen the preferred supplier, and we then begin a dialogue with them, and they don't have to win the business, it's theirs to lose, because basically we're walking to them with an open wallet saying, here you go, do you want to buy some of this? So what's your thought on that?
So I guess the way so first of all, Martin, I'm not going to touch the McKinsey comments. I'll just
just to let you know, I've just the guest we had booked from McKinsey for next week has just cancelled.
I'm not surprised, but they still want their $500,000 check that you were going to. Sorry, I couldn't one dig. All right, one dig, but that's it. Okay, so all right. So Martin's point is actually very well. It's well taken. So the some of you guys maybe know or remember one of the big pieces of data, one of these splash, sort of billboard-esque types of pieces of data that we developed at Gartner right before I departed, was this rapidly increasing percentage of B2B buyers of complex purchases who would say they'd rather actually buy that thing, that solution, without ever talking to a rep at all. We call that a rep-free buying experience. In 2020, and this keynote, I'm going to hint at a keynote. This keynote, as far as I know, Gartner hasn't taken it down yet. It was the keynote for the 2020 sales conference, and they put it on LinkedIn. I delivered it virtually here at this desk. And last time I checked, it's still up on LinkedIn. I don't know why they didn't take it down, but yeah, which is great. But so in that keynote, what the number is 43%, which some people might remember is 43% of B2B buyers say that they would prefer to buy that B2B solution without ever talking to a sales rep at all. A year later, so right as I was leaving, is the last thing I did at Gartner when I left in May, is I scripted a keynote which someone else delivered. Alice is a great friend of mine. And the number had gone up to 70% or 72%. And this is and what was interesting, it started out with millennials, but then it crept into Gen Xers, and the baby boomers were going. Basically across the board, B2B buyers are saying, kind of, Adam, to your point, I can learn on my own. I can do my own due diligence. I can research. I can download information. I kind of not only don't need to talk to a rep, I kind of don't want to, because they're just the branding that sales professionals have is so bad right now, which is unfortunate because it's such an honorable profession when done well. But that's a side. Put a pin in that. We can come back to that if you want. But let me get to there's a kicker to this, and the kicker is what's so interesting. Here's the kicker to the story. For those customers who prefer to buy those B2B solutions without talking to a sales rep at all, they are far more likely to experience higher levels of regret for whatever it is that they buy.
Oh, wow.
So in other words, this is like this really interesting story of be careful what you wish for, you just might get it, right? So it's like you celebrate the fact that I'm not going to talk to a sales rep, and you go, I'm going to go do this on my own, and you get deep into it on your own. It's like, oh my God, this is awful, right? This is really, really hard. And I mean, just the same thing happens on the B2C side, on the consumer side, for all of us as human beings. Have you guys I was just talking to my wife about this last night, partly because I knew I was going to have this conversation. But have you ever tried to buy? So let me back up. Sorry. Large percentage of what we buy in this home, as is the case with many Americans, is on Amazon, right? So like 95% of what we buy, other than groceries, comes in through the front door in a box with a smile on it, right? It's just or Shopify, which is an amazing company, but it's online one way or another. But if you guys tried to go on Amazon at some point and buy like a $15 dongle for your laptop, does this happen to you where it's like, okay, no big, it's like, what's the big deal? I'm going to buy a $15 dongle. I just like the word dongle for my laptop, right? So you do a little quick search, boom, boom, boom. All right. All of a sudden, okay, here's 4,000 of them. Wait, what? Right? It's like, I don't know what to do. It's like, by the way, 3,999 of them are brands you've never heard of. Okay, that's no problem. I'll go with the brand I've heard of. So you go with the brand I've heard of. Oh, it's got 4.8 stars, but there's a bunch of 1 stars from people that hate it. That makes me kind of suspicious. Maybe I better start looking around. And all of a sudden, you don't realize it, but 3 hours later, yes, you're deep into some rat hole or like blind alley of reading review after review after review. And you've got 3 different things and they're side by side and you're confused as heck. And it's a $15 dongle for your laptop. And at some point you get so exasperated, you don't know what to do, but it's okay because Amazon's got your back. They've got a little button on the platform, which you all know if you shop there. And it literally says save for later, right? And so what you do is you click save for later and it all goes away. The pain stops, the frustration stops, you go on with your day. And oh, by the way, you never actually get the dongle. And my wife, I kid you not, my wife has over 500 items saved for later in her Amazon account. Oh, right? That's 500 purchase journeys that stalled out because buyers are unable to buy on their own, even the simplest things. Now multiply that times millions of dollars and start about, okay, now we're talking about a couple $100 million industrial turbines from a plant that have to integrate with a new sales technology, which may have data protection issues. And I got 18 people involved in this purchase. Where's my save for later button, right? This is why I think, Adam, we need sales professionals today. We need sales professionals today to help customers, to guide them, to be their coach, to give them confidence, not in you or your brand or your to give them confidence in themselves to pull the trigger. Because I think that's it's like when I'm overwhelmed with my decision complexity, I'm overwhelmed with information, I'm overwhelmed with my inability to implement, and I'm overwhelmed with what is the value of this thing. What I really need is I just need someone to tell me which freaking dongle to buy who's credible. That's what I need. And that's the opportunity. So remember, this whole thing started with chasing differentiation. If you're looking to stand out today, if you're looking to differentiate yourself as a sales professional, it's not to show up with yet one more piece of information. It's to be a guide. I think the move, and so this is sort of my thinking now, is a move, what I would call moving from frame breaking to frame making. How can I be a frame maker? How can I create a framework of value, a framework of decision making, a framework of implementation that helps customers come to their own decisions so that they feel more confident to take action, because that's your biggest competitor today is inaction.
So this dovetails perfectly into one of the things that we often talk about. So you said, okay, we'll put a pin in that and come back to that a bit later about how the personas.
Can we just, like Andrew put in the chat that we all turn into Grandpa Simpson at some point? I think I did that about 40 minutes ago. So
yeah, as soon as you told someone to get off your lawn.
Exactly. So I just wanted to acknowledge that that's a fabulous comment. I'm sorry, Adam, I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine. And I think that one of the things that you highlighted is that you've gone onto Amazon, you're going to buy a dongle. There's 4,000 dongles. You're not a dongle expert. Therefore, you can't possibly know which dongle is good or bad. One of them tells you it's got a die-cast plug, and the other one tells you it's got an unbreakable flex, and one of them says it's compatible with these things. And you just go,
You're quite good at this.
Yeah. So often, every salesperson is stepping forward and they're saying, well, I'm a thought leader on this, I'm a thought leader on this, and we often say to people, the only thing that you can take to market to differentiate yourself is who you are. Now, you may not be an expert at buying ERP systems or buying dongles, but you are an expert on telling whether you like people or not. So you come onto a group like this, and you go around the group and you go, I like him, I like her, I like him, I don't like him, I don't like him, I like him. And that is something that everybody feels confident doing. And that's the initial cut that people make. You look like a nasty, arrogant, money-grabbing salesperson. I don't want to talk to you because you're not going to educate me. You look like a friendly, helpful person that's always chatty and approachable. Actually, I will have a conversation with you because I don't feel threatened. So I think that that's a really important foundation, if you like, for sales in the digital age.
Maybe, Adam, but if I take that and extend it, that sounds like what you're saying is be approachable, be kind of chatty, where you don't wear an old rumpled T-shirt. But if I may, and that's the unfair interpretation of what you said. What I have learned in the many years of doing this, I have a really bad projection bias. I mean, like a really, really strong projection bias. Right? I just assume that everyone is as insane as I am, thinks like I do, acts like I do, and I'm wrong 99% of the time. So what I have found, and I struggle with this, but at this level that you're talking about, Em, is I need to. It's a mirroring technique, right? I need to figure out who is this person and how can I give. Not even how can I be like them? That would be mirroring. How can I just be like them? But rather, how can I figure out their what's the energy that they need, right? And this starts out getting really human, really deep. I apologize because I'm making this up as I go right now. But I think what I'm now actually doing with you is I'm sharing with you out loud consciously what I think I just instinctively do. And I'm trying to do it with you guys right now. It's like, what's the energy of this group? Are you more formal or informal? Are you more skeptical or are you actually more open? And I'm trying to match that. And I'm trying to figure out how do I give you the right energy that's going to get you excited, right? To get you engaged. And it may be the opposite. So opposites attract. It may be the same. It might be mirroring. So if it's skeptical, if I'm talking to someone, this goes back to the challenger customer stuff. There's some really neat work in there about mobilizers and teachers and just profiling stakeholders. And I come back to my own mind all the time. But if someone is very clear to me initially a skeptic, usually they're sitting like this, they got their arms crossed, they're leaning back in their chair. It's like, got it, game on. Okay, let's go, right? And it's like that's a very different conversation than someone starts, hey, Brent, it's so good to see you. And so it is. And it doesn't mean, so if someone's like this and sitting back there, it doesn't mean I do that too. That will probably actually make it worse. That amplifies skepticism. But I've got to come out with a level of expertise. I've got to start talking. I've got to put my data hat on. I've got to come with evidence. Evidence is everything to a skeptic, right? So it's like, sorry, that's yeah.
It is, but the difference in this environment is that you're already in the room talking to us.
Yeah.
And at that point, you can be that reflection. Point. You can be that that mirror or that contrast. The reality is that when you are putting an outbound coat on and you're going out onto the world of LinkedIn or social or the website or whatever it may be, you're not, there's a million people. And actually what we have found is that people are interested in finding somebody that they find some kind of synergy with. I have a lot of sales conversations with people that play the guitar for obvious reasons. And it's not because I'm trying to sell them a guitar, it's because that's a great rapport building thing. We talk about guitars, we talk about what they do, we talk about what I do, we see if there's some chemistry and some synergy. And if there is, we develop that. And if there isn't, that's fine. We've had a nice chat and we move on and chat to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the beauties of the digital space, even on a platform like LinkedIn, there's 875 million members. You're not looking to talk to 875 million people. You're looking to talk to some people that you have something in common with that may lead to some commercial conversation at some point down the road. But the key thing is that I want somebody who sees my strengths as a strength and my weaknesses as not important, rather than me pretending that I'm all things to all men.
I'm with you. So this is, by the way, the guitars on the wall has become a bit of a trope of the you're the third person this week with guitars on the wall. I think I've talked to. So
everybody's got a guitar on the
Everyone
wall.
does it.
Okay, just enough.
But man, I say that with love. That was not a criticism. I appreciate you, man. But you become like actually almost like a segment in my mind. Okay, this is the guitar on the wall guy, right? It's like but it's like a little laid back. It's like kind of loves music, which is right brained. It's I know how to work with this person. That's great. But I think Adam, your point is really interesting. So in this world where it's you just have to kind of, and Tim, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. You just have to kind of put yourself out there, right? And say, this is who I am. This is, as you're talking about, I'm say, this is what I believe, and this is who I am, and this is sort of my way of working. I mean, let's face it, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, as I would say half of your guests would agree with right now, right? But it's just who I am. And, and if you ask me to be someone radically different, that's actually going to be hard. And I'm going to struggle to and so we're probably not going to hit it off. Here's where, though, I think that's a bit of a challenge is if I'm a sales rep with a bounded territory and say, whether it's 5 or 500 customers I can go after, and I have to find business in that small universe, it's a bit of a luxury to just say, be your true authentic self. It's like, what if 90% of the people in my territory hate my true authentic self? What do I do now?
Welcome to my world.
Right? By the way, this is true in marriage too, but that's a whole other story.
So Alex or Rob, you had questions. Do you want to ask a question?
Actually, the question I came with is a little bit different now. I picked up on one word that you said, Brent, when you were talking about transitioning from the self-service on Amazon to the self-service of multi-million-dollar projects. And you said the word credible.
Yeah.
And that sparked a thought. So sales, the transactions are the lifeblood of any organization. That's how we kicked off this call, is sales are the lifeblood. But is sales the department still the center of it all, still the most important department in the organization, given that credibility wall that sales has to climb?
So now you're treading into dangerous waters, aren't you, Rob? Because
that's me,
right? Because now we get into the stuff that's really urgent and really hard, and really urgent, really hard is well, it's really hard, right? So this is I was lucky enough to publish a couple things with Harvard Business Review this year, and there's one, it was a digital article, which they named, I didn't name, is like sales and marketing are becoming obsolete. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that one kind of blew up. It got a lot of attention.
Yep.
And it's a profile actually of the company I'll be with next week in Lake Louise. It's Smart Technologies, Calgary-based company. It's educational technology. Jeff Lowe is the chief commercial officer. There's an amazing guy because he's Canadian. And what this, just briefly, and you guys can go find this article, but what they've done at Smart is they clean sheeted the whole thing. First principles, they said, okay, customers are buying in a radically different way. Let's figure out what are the buying jobs that customers have to accomplish or complete to their satisfaction in order for them to arrive at a purchase decision. So this stuff would be inspired by a guy named Bob Mesta, and this is a name worth writing down for those who take notes. Mesta it's hard to pronounce. It's Moesta. It's actually not hard to spell, but it's just the spelling doesn't look like the pronunciation. Bob Mesta.
I've had him on my podcast.
Bob's a really, really intriguing guy. Yeah. By the way, just show you how smart Bob is. He's like a genius and a savior to all of us human beings, at least those who travel. He's the guy that came up with the little arrow on the fuel gauge on your car that tells you whether that you put the gas in on the left, the passenger side or the driver's side. That's literally Bob's idea.
That must be worth a Nobel Prize, surely.
Right? I know, or at least a candle on an altar or something. I don't know, man. That's like right up there. It's like, holy mackerel. And he's a really good guy. And so Bob, working with Clay Christensen, who's passed, came up with this idea of jobs to be done, and they've written about it in other places. And Bob's written a book about jobs to be done. But Jeff and the Smart team, picking up on what we were talking about at CB and Gartner and Bob's work, they what they did is they dismantled, Rob, sales, marketing, success, service, all of it. They took it all down. They didn't fire. It's 250 people all kept their jobs, but they recombobulated it. So in other words, they actually reconfigured their entire commercial engine around those buying jobs. So we have a team that helps customers complete this job, a learn job, a buy job, an install job. So we have a team for learn, we have a team for buy, we have a team for install, and they go to market in pods, which is in some ways not a new idea, but is really new around buying jobs, which is so for any region, geographic region, they have a pod or a team that represents each of those buying jobs and helping customers complete those jobs. Now, to do this, their CEO is a guy named Nicholas, is also a good guy. He had to say, you know what we should do? I agree. We should completely dismantle our entire commercial engine and reconfigure it. I mean, like how do you even do that? But I guess, Rob, the simpler way I would answer your question is, I think we now have to acknowledge we live in a world where your sales force is no longer the channel to your customer, but a channel to your customer. Full stop. At any given point on the buying journey. So we used to think about this linearly, right? So first marketing, then sales, first the digital, then the human. And we now know definitively from research, part of which I was involved with at CB and Gartner, that process isn't linear. Customers loop their way through it. They're channel agnostic. I don't really care if I get the information from a rep or a website, which, by the way, is in direct conflict with customers saying, actually, I'd rather not talk to a rep. So there's some really interesting tensions going on there. But nonetheless, what I really want to do is, because I think it's what customers are saying, you're asking me the wrong questions. Not who do I want to talk to, a website, or do I want to talk to a rep? I just want to freaking feel confident about the job I'm trying to complete to move this deal forward. And if a human can help me, that's great. I don't believe they can help me, but if they can, that's great. And if a website can help me, that's great. I'm going to go there first, right? But so what this means is we have to stop thinking, I think, about sellers and making sellers. Well, I think we have to keep thinking about that, but we have to think about selling, right? So selling happens at an organization through multiple channels, through human channels, through partner channels, through digital channels, and we have to solve at a higher altitude for building customer confidence across all those channels and tie them all together. And that's hard. That's so hard, right? And it's so different from anything that I think that the single biggest obstacle for most commercial organizations across the next 5 years in driving disproportionate growth will be their own legacy silos, getting in their way of helping them realign to how customers buy. And I acknowledge that's a bummer. Do you know what I mean? Because incentives, budgets, identity, right? There's a whole nother riff here that's so interesting around identity. In other words, if I've grown up my entire career thinking I am the head of sellers, right? I'm a chief sales officer. Because chief sales officer, I know a lot of them, God love them, they're good people, but they like to define themselves by the size of their sales force, right? That's how oftentimes they'll introduce themselves. I'm Brent Adamson, I sell for this company, and I've got a team of 500 people. Well, I'm Tim Hughes, and I sell for this company. I've got a team of 4,000 people. We used to bring out the Tyrone Edwards, is a good, great guy. He's a former head of sales at Merck. The pharmaceutical, back in the days when farms all had huge sales. You'd always trump everybody. He's like, I'm Tyrone Edwards. I used to be the head of sales at Merck, where I had 15,000 salespeople. And the whole room would go, oh my God, right? It's like, but it was like we would define ourselves by the people. In other words, I'm the head of sellers, and so my job as a head of sales is to build, train, coach, deploy, and ultimately win with the sales force. That's how I define myself. That's not just what I do. That's who I am. right? That's my identity. And if I suddenly walk up to you and say, hey, by the way, you need to think about, like, it's not, your sales reps are not the channel, but a channel. I'm not just undermining their behavior. This is like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, Dilt's ladder type stuff, right? If I'm actually tapping into them, not just at their behavior level, you sell through reps, but your identity level, you are the leader of selling. Now this stuff gets to be really threatening, right? It starts to feel very challenging. This is the difference in mask wearing back in the pandemic. If someone says, oh, putting on a mask, I just got to change what I do, versus putting on a mask, you're asking me to be someone different, right?
Right.
And that's, so my question is, how do we begin to de-escalate changes that are perceived to be a change in identity down to being perceived as a change in behavior? I think that's where this stuff gets real, because now my background in linguistics starts coming out and I get really geeky. I start geeking out on language and word choice and things about how do I position this stuff to get people on board, because this is hard, Rob. Man, that was a long and weird answer to your question, wasn't it? You didn't see any of that come, did you?
I thought I've
Eric, you're still on that chicken, aren't you? I want to know more.
I'm still on the chicken. I'm still trying to work out how I can give a good answer for how it can reach the steering wheel. So I've got a bunch of people in my life that I think if I ever meet this person, I've got a couple of things I want to tell them. And what do I want to tell Brent if I ever meet Brent? So no, this is really cool. So and I guess you get a lot of this. I got a lot of people going, oh my God, you changed my life. So I just wanted to give you a little practical example of how you're that again, going back to the highway to hell. Highway to hell.
Play Freebird.
back in the day when this little thing came out,
yeah.
I read it and I was
this little one.
No, this one.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but it says right on it, there's over 500,000 copies sold. So you all get to have one.
Oh, yeah. So I was a managing director of a company. I was quite forward thinking at the time, and I read this and I was like, we are going to change. We are going to change. What we were doing at the time, we were very good at, we sold a thing. We were an engineering service provider, and we sold a very niche set of a service, and our salespeople our marketing team were fairly good at marketing. They would give some leads. Our sales team would go in and say, hi, Mr. Project Director, on this $2 billion project. We'd like to talk to you about what we do. And 9 times out of 10, they would say, right, fine, you can do that bit of the project. And they would come back to the office, and I would say, how did we get on? They said, yeah, we had to give them a bit of discount, but we got the job. And we just did that, and we were quite successful. EBITDA was quite bubbly, everything was going well, and we were getting a better name for it. When I read this book, and I bought a copy for everyone in the company and said, right, I'm not going to force this on you. I'd like you to read it willingly. Particularly the bit. Why did we just go into that big project director and just tell him what we do? And they said, because that's all they wanted to hear. Yeah. He was really busy for time. He was frantic when he came into the room. He was one of these guys. He was a chain-smoking, amphetamines-addled project director on a $2 billion project, and he was just like, come on, just tell me what I want to know. Show me the brochure and get out. So this little, it's still ringed. It's still ringed from the day. We are hearing now more than ever that before sales leaders are urging their sales organizations to place the customer first. So why did we only talk about what we do? Because that's all the customer wanted to hear. The term customer centricity is back in dramatic faction. The assumption is that if companies want to grow coming out of the recent downturn, they're going to have to ensure that everything they do delivers maximum customer value. The problem is, however, while companies have been emphatic about their customer centricity, they've been equally vague about their sales organizations and how to actually do that. So we took this and we studied it hard. We had an immense engineering horsepower and engineering integrity management horsepower that we used internally to deliver on our projects. What if we go in and sit down and go, so Mr. Project Director, what's your biggest problem? And let's have a guess. Time, resources, budgets. What if we were to provide you all of that? Well, I can't hire people. I'm not allowed to hire people. I don't have the budget. Yeah, but as under one project, under one purchase order, instead of just the little bit that you know us for, what if we were your engineering horsepower? What if we also managed contractors on your behalf? That thinking in that paragraph in that book changed the EBITDA and future commercial success of a small organization. That little paragraph right there, because it made us think, and it made us think differently, and it transformed us from, we have a service that we'd like to sell you, to we're going to become pain relievers on your massive project. And we got the first one, we got the second one. Now this is us going from, a $200,000 sale at 30% margin to a $1.5 million sale at 50% margin. Company changing numbers because of that paragraph. I just wanted to share that with you because that's true. That happened.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The second thing was there was a friend of mine. This is a story that I'd like to share over a beer or a cup of coffee. If I ever get 5 minutes with Brent, a friend of mine worked for a huge, massive, one of the best known companies in the world, a bazillion employees. And they went through, he told me, he said, that book you mentioned years ago that you gave to all your staff? I said, yeah. He said, we're doing the Challenger sale. All the sales team are now doing it. And I don't know if it was, if you were involved or if this was something, but they were doing a Challenger sales training program. And he said, it's kind of changing my life. And I said, how's it going? He said, yeah, it's making me think differently about everything. We're going in completely armed. And then a few weeks later, he called me and said, so I've got something to tell you today. I interacted with my first client in my first Challenger mode, and it didn't go too well. I said, why? And he said, I won't say his name because he might be listening. This is a bit embarrassing. He said, we went into this client and all the board was there and all the technical people were there. And I sat down and I thought, right, okay, I've heard enough. And he was with his director, right? He was with his director who had put them all onto the Challenger program. And he said, right, can I just summarize what I've heard for the last hour? That none of you know how to run your business.
Oh dear.
And his director went, ha ha, good one, and said his name. And he went, no, not one single person in here understands how this business runs. And I do. And I'm
dear.
he said, the director said, can we just have a minute? Can we just have a little minute? I had that, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm challenging. He's like, no, you're killing us in here. You're totally, he says, I'm challenging. He's like, dial it back a little bit. Take a breath. You've just insulted the entire board. That's not challenging. That's really stupid what you're doing. So let me rescue this. And they rescued it and it turned out quite well. And he's like, right, okay, I thought we were to go in and almost just make them realize they don't have a clue. But no. Let's go back to first principles again, and we'll work this through. And he then employed the mechanics of it and became very successful for his organization and transferred out of country and grew. But his first experience of, right, I'm going to tell them what it's all about. They want Challenger. Yeah. I'm going to challenge them.
Well, it's funny because that's how so many people have interpreted the story. It's which to horrible effect of that. Matt Dixon's got this great line. We used to say, it's like, look, we chose to call it the Challenger, not the jerk, for a reason, right? Matt's hilarious. I always appreciated that line. There's something that's really interesting to me about all this, right? So, if you guys were to read The Challenger Customer, which is the second of the two books, and if I may, in many ways, I think is the better of the two books because we were just so much smarter. Because that's when we had really shifted our perspective to buying as opposed to selling and really understanding what's happening there. But no one ever has done this, I'm sure. But if you go all the way back to the back of the book and deep in the acknowledgments where I thank my wife and two daughters, there's a line I put in there, and I put it in there very purposefully, which is, it was a little note to my daughters, and may you grow up and understand in life. I've got my copy here. I could probably read it to you, but it's like, may you grow up and understand in life. The core lesson in life is the same as the core lesson of this book, which is everything revolves around empathy. And so it's the only place in the two books where the word empathy shows up, and it shows up in the very back of the second book, buried. But I think, Eric, at the heart and soul of all of this is a really deep sense of empathy. And I hesitate to even talk about it because everybody seems to be talking about empathy now. And I don't want it to become like a trope. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's like trust or value, or it's one of these like empty vessel words that everyone gets on board with, and it just becomes a du jour sort of thing, which is a bummer because it literally is everything, right? So in other words, it goes back, Adam, to your point. Like, it's not just about mirroring, it's understanding the energy you're giving me and figuring out what energy I need to give back. And figuring out what energy I need to give back depends on understanding as best as I can with my bad projection bias what's going on in your head, so that I can figure out what's going to help you feel better, not about me, but help you feel better about yourself, help you feel more confident about what's going on in your world. Empathy is at the heart and soul of Challenger, in the sense of we talk a lot about this in the second book, the blue one, we call it the blue one, is mapping your customer's mental model and then figuring out how to break that mental model, right? So but I often said, Eric, if you want to truly understand how your customer thinks about their business, what's the first thing you have to understand? This is a really great question, by the way. I used to ask this all the time. If you want to truly understand how your customer thinks about your business, if you truly want to understand how your customer thinks about their business, what's the first thing you have to understand? What do you guys think?
How you think about your business.
No, so those are probably all true.
Are you saying truly understand how your customer thinks about your business?
No, their business.
Or their business. Their business.
Yeah, if you truly want to understand how a customer thinks about their business, what do you have to understand?
Go on. Give us the punchline.
So the answer when I did this, sorry, it's come on, now I'm waiting. No, but the most people would say like you have to understand their business. That seems to be the most obvious. Like if I want to understand how a customer thinks about their business, first thing I would understand is their business. Now, if that were true, what would I do? I'd say my sales reps need to have business acumen training. I'd tell them to go read the financials and the quarterly, the reports and the 10Ks and the 10Qs and whatever all that other great stuff is that we learn about in business school. I would argue, if I may, if you truly want to understand how your customer thinks about their business, the first thing you have to know is how does your customer think about their business? In other words, you have to get inside their head. You have to map their mental model, whether it's right or wrong. You have to understand their mental model of how they think their business works. What are the outcomes they're trying to achieve? What are the primary drivers that lead to those outcomes? What are the secondary drivers that lead to the primary drivers and the tertiary drivers and so on, and build out that mental model and then step back and look at it and ask yourself, okay, where can I play? What's an opportunity for me to bring a story that shows them a different way to reorganize that mental model? What's a driver that's missing? What's a connection that they've made that probably isn't a good connection? What's a connection I can make for them that they've overlooked, right? So this is literally how we constructed all of our research at CEB. We went through mental model exercise. It's really funny. If anyone ever cares, that particularly the Challenger Customer, the second book, is a primer step by step by step for how we built all of our research at CEB. It's just masked as a sales technique. And and I know it works because I've done it for 20 years and it's insanely powerful, but it requires getting inside your customer's head and understanding how they think about things. And that to me is a really powerful example of empathy. By the way, Eric, the other part of your story just makes me realize one more time, yet once again, because it's so humbling. I mean this sincerely, to hear those stories and the impact they've had. It's incredible. And there's one thing I think we all want as human beings is like when we're gone someday is to know that maybe we made a mark, right? That we left something, we had a dent, we had a positive impact on people.
Totally.
And I feel in some ways I can, I'm not satisfied. I want to keep checking that box, but like to even check that box a little bit is insanely humbling.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Also, you're welcome. It also tells me, by the way, I've made a 25-year career. I was an academic before that. It's a whole different career, but I've made a long career out of making other people wealthy. There you go. I have made more people wealthy in the last 25 years. It's insane because
the flip side to that was I did a little assessment in there and found out I had 15 lone wolves, which was another kettle of fish.
Yeah, it's by the way, when I plug these books, just so you guys know, because sometimes people ding me on this, is I don't own the IP. So the IP actually is currently owned by the Challenger company. It was owned by CB, then Gartner, and then theoretically they could take my name off the book if they wanted. They don't. But so the books, and when I plug them, it's because of the ideas, not because I get any money off of it. Yeah. I just think they're smart. It's just research that I think is very cool.
Very cool.
Man, that was a pregnant pause.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Yeah. So having sort of gone through the whole kind of Challenger school and been trained as a rep and a leader, we used to put a lot of focus, for obvious reasons, around the experience we would deliver the customer.
Yeah.
And how we would quantify the differentiating commercial value we would bring to the customer. But I think I've heard you talk more recently about how there's a shift from experience to feeling and putting more emphasis on the feeling that we're actually giving or creating, that emotion that we're creating for the customer. And certainly when I think about a lot of we do on this call around digital selling and taking ownership of your personal brand and building relationships on digital platforms, often talking with heads of sales who are still adamant cold calling and cadence messaging of emails for prospecting is the way to go, which has a completely opposite effect on making someone feel good. How are you can you talk to that? What are you experiencing, seeing? Love to hear your point of view.
there's a whole long rant here. I gotta be careful just because you guys don't need another rant. But I had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago down in Dallas at the University of Texas, Dallas, hosted by Howard Dover, who runs one of the best sales programs in the world at the university down there. Mark Hunter was there, Dave Brock was there, Aaron Evans, Sherry Leviton, Alice Hyman. We got together just a bunch of sort of thought leaders and just kind of spent the day thinking about it. And one of the things that we kind of concluded out of that, Alex, is something we all kind of know be true, which is the SaaS industry has broken sales. They have in the name of advancing the world, they have set us back at least 10 to 15, if not 20 years. And it's just really, really frustrating, right? And what's so interesting is they're so confident that this is, by the way, endemic the SaaS culture in general in Silicon Valley, which is they're 10 years behind while claiming they're 10 years ahead, right? And it's very, very frustrating. And so this whole like volume-based game of just hire more SDRs and spam the world with InMails has just been highly destructive for our profession. And by the way, it's been highly destructive for those companies themselves now as we see layoffs, right? As people call it the Patagonia vest layoff or recession, because they hired a huge number of bodies just thinking that was going to generate money, and now they're coming under economic pressure and realize it's not actually happening. They're just laying them all off, and it's tragic, really. So I think if you guys want to find really world-class selling, you know where you go? You don't go to Silicon Valley, and you don't go to the people claiming they're great at it. You go to the quiet companies in the Fortune 50 who are still the ADPs and the Xeroxes and the Johnson Controls and the Schneider Electrics, the non-glamour places that have been doing it for decades and have incredibly mature sales organizations and methods that So Alex, the other thing about this product selling, because the thing is in the SaaS world, the rules are different because and I'm going to speak in generalities, which I think anyone could drive a truck through the holes of my logic here, but nonetheless, it's very visceral for me, is that for a lot of SaaS companies, they're not really truly playing for growth or principled growth. What they're playing for is an exit, right? That's when you build your entire company around an exit, whether it's going public or selling to the next round of investors, then the rules are different, right? The rules are just make as much money as I can, clean up the books and cash out, and then take all the problems that are sort of tertiary that kind of spin off of this and hand them off to someone else and say, that plate of garbage is now your problem, not mine. And I'm going to go to the bank with my multi-million-dollar paycheck. By the way, I do wonder sometimes who's the huckleberry here, right? So I can sit here on my high horse and say that's a bad idea while they're out in some sort of catamaran in the middle of the Mediterranean having an amazing time. So I'm not sure exactly if my principled high horse is really the right answer here. But nonetheless, I do think that's what's happening, is that when you play for an exit, the rules are different.
That is the best vignette of the comment for sales in 2022. That is absolutely brilliant. And so many of the organizations that we talk to are exactly in that situation where they've scaled the business. They've done loads of stuff, which anybody that takes a step back and looks at it can see is a short-termist view. And the turkeys have come home to roost. They can't get their next round of funding. They haven't actually got any pipeline. They haven't got a mechanism for generating sales. They can't even maintain the clients that they already have. And these organizations are, the next 2 years is going to see loads of them go to the wall.
And they all buy the Challenger sale and tell their people to go be aggressive, and it goes back to Eric's point. It's a tough world out there. But I need to run too, and I know everyone else is going. I'm going to go do a live show on LinkedIn with Matt Hines, who's a great guy, by the way. But we do one every Friday. Real quick, if I could. So I put out a video once a week called Brent's Breakdown. We put on LinkedIn and YouTube, which is like my little rants and snackable pieces of content. And all this idea of frame making. This is what we do at Ecosystems. It's a platform that's originally called value management, but what I think of it as, it's a frame making platform. So if you're going to help put a framework around how your customers buy to help them make them more confident, there is actually technology, there are tools, there's ways, there's frameworks to actually do that. And that's why I came to this company, because I'm super excited that I just think for the right companies who want to do this in a principled way, Adam, there is answers. And so that's a conversation for anyone who wants to have it down the road. You guys are amazing. This was great fun. I hope you had a good time.
We
did. Thank you very much.
A bit like
really
stop! I'm just a schlub from Omaha, guys. It's all I am. So
thank you so much for coming on, Brent, and giving us.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thanks, Brent.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Be well.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Fantastic. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Digital Download.